away we go. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you're at, all over the world. You know, what I love about this is sometimes I read through the comments and we've got somebody in Singapore or London or just some really, really cool places. So, hey, good evening, everybody. This is Jeff with Junior Hockey Advisor. Let's get the other trusted half of this group together and bring Bloomer on. There he is, the Bloomer.
Hello, everybody.
How
you doing, Jeff?
Doing great, man. This is Junior Hockey Advisor. Ask me anything. Tonight we're going to just cover a bunch of things. What we brought to the table, and actually this is Mike's idea, not mine, so I can't take
all the credit.
What's that?
I don't got to take all the credit.
Well, you should. You need it any way you can get it. So, first of all, Junior Hockey Advisor. Who we are. We're hockey guys. We work in the industry, and we're here to assist you and help you with any questions you have about the process, about getting from 16s, 15s, from high school, from prep to juniors, from juniors to college. That's what we're here for. That's what we discuss. Once again, that's Mike Boom. I'm Jeff Colson, and we do this every Monday as much as possible. Now, next week is going to be a little bit of a problem, because I'm going to be in South Carolina. I mentioned this a couple weeks ago. I'm going down to Tybee Island. I've never been there. Been to the area. Been, South Carolina plenty of times, but first time to Tybee Island. So we don't know yet how we're going to do this, if I'm going to pack up the whole, my coffee-stained equipment and see if I can get it to work on the road, or if we just take a week off next week. We'll see. We'll see. Depends also how much you want to hear. So if you're around, say hello tonight. Tell us where you are, what you're doing, who your kid is. I don't care. Tell us something. Say hi. Just say hi. Let us know. We usually like you to say hi, tell us your name, and maybe throw in where you're watching from. A lot of our regulars have not checked in a while. It'd be nice to see a lot of them check in and say hi. We've got, Sheboygan, Wisconsin hasn't checked in a while. Odessa, Texas hasn't checked in a while. Flint, Michigan has not checked in a while. A lot of places in Ohio haven't checked in a while. We just need to get some people on there. We do have one here coming in, and it's a name you might recognize, Mike, but it's on the other screen, so I can't pull it up on our screen. But it's some guy named Jared Bassard.
Buzzy.
He says, "How you doing, fellas?" Buzzy. So. Buzzy worked for us for 4.5 minutes, Mike and I.
But it was the best 4.5 minutes.
It was great. Yeah, he was a wonderful scout for us for maybe 4 minutes and 45 seconds. But we love him. He's now a veteran college coach. He's not even just a college coach, but he's been at it for more than a year. So he's got that veteran status. So it's great to see him checking in. I don't know what he's ever going to learn from us, but what the hell? At least he's on saying hi. So good to see you, Buzzy. Hope things are well for you. Some of those other places, check in. Tell us what you're doing. Say hi. So tonight, like I said, Mike's got a great topic, and that is what questions should you be asking coaches during this time process as you're exploring teams, as you're exploring opportunities before you sign with a team. What questions should you ask? And honestly, I think this might be one of our most important shows that we've done so far. I mean, this is extremely important stuff. Getting that idea of what questions you're going in with as a parent, as a player, as a family, covering your bases and make sure you got all the questions, answered. And honestly, since Jared's on and, we've got a college coach, Jared, please jump on at any point and say, hey, this is the kind of things that we ask on our end, and maybe there's a difference in, the two. So anyway, he does show up. I'm sorry. I got him on the, so the comments show up now. There we go. And then he also said, if I can get this one to pop up, 4.5 minutes. That's right. Okay. Anyway, Bloomer, why don't you take this? Oh, Frank said hi.
Awesome. It's always good to hear from Frank. Yeah, so from my standpoint of coaching 16s and 18s, part of what I do is I try to connect my players with different junior hockey opportunities, and then it's up to that program and the player to really figure out what is going to be the best place for them to play. What I always take for granted is the fact that a lot of these kids, they've never had these conversations before, or the families haven't had these conversations before. So then they'll come back and ask me, well, what do we've got this call, we got this Zoom call set up. What should we ask them? Like, how do we approach this whole situation? And because the last thing you want to do is take a conversation with a coach or scouts or whoever's going to be on that call and just be really quiet because you're afraid to ask questions. You're not
Right.
really sure what to do because obviously that program might think maybe you're not interested or you're just not really into it or whatever else, and send the wrong message.
Let's clarify that, Bloomer, because I think that's important. What you said there was, you got to talk. If you're going into this as player and parent, isn't your opinion that the player should try to take the initiative as much as possible when it's appropriate, and that the parents should take a second? There's nothing in my opinion, there's nothing worse than a parent that goes, well, Johnny thinks this and Johnny thinks that and Johnny wants this and Johnny needs this and Johnny would like to ask you this, and Johnny's just sitting there picking his nose and looking at the ceiling. There's nothing worse in my opinion than a parent that does that. I mean, there are parent questions that have to be answered by a parent or asked by a parent, but honestly, the lead, if you're on a Zoom call with a coach, player, parent, it should be a conversation mostly between the player and the coaching staff, unless the coaches go, hey, look, we want to focus this part of the conversation directly with the parents. And they might. I know when you and I are on calls, we do that sometimes where we go, all right, this is parent-oriented questions. What questions do you have, parents? What do you want to discuss, So anyway, sorry, Mike.
No, that's good. It's kind of more of the conversation we want to get out there for people just to understand also. And then the other part of it is some cases players are afraid to be on a call with their parents. So they're not really sure, like, hey, I'm 18 or I'm 17, I'm 19, whatever their age is. Like, do I really, does that look bad if I have my parents on and things like that? So, we've been on calls, I know, together where we're on a Zoom call and we can see that there's parents that are on this call. They're just not in view of the camera, and the kid's kind of like interacting. And we've even
it's
said
one of these things where his face just keeps going.
Yeah. Yep. You hear the whispers and things like that. And I know we've said
or it's this one, shut up.
Yeah.
I got it.
Yes. And we've called it out and said, if your mom or dad are here and want to be on the call, like, they don't have to be away from view. They can, we can have this conversation together. And again, they're not really sure what to do. So, I've kind of, given my players the advice of, if your parents are going to be on the call, if it's on a speakerphone and the, coach or whoever you're talking to can't see what's going on, just say, hey, I've got you on speaker. Do you mind if my parents are also included in this conversation? And then you go through and, again, you take the lead on the call. But then if your parents get into, some of the different questions that are more parent related, it's all good. Because if you're a person like us who are on the call from the organizational standpoint, the last thing we want to do is have a call with a player, go through some information, but the player doesn't ask enough information that the parents have all their questions answered. So then you have to set up an additional call, or there's just more back and forth that has to happen when it could have just all been done on the same phone call. So,
listen, there's a couple of things I'd like to add to that, Mike. One is, hey, look, if you're dealing with a quality program that's been around the block a few times, they're going to have almost everything you want already teed up for you. In other words, the website's giving you good information, whatever emails they've sent you gives you good information, and the conversation itself, they already have a planned out attack on what information they're going to give, how they're going to give it, and what they want to, what order that information is going to sequence out in. In fact, Mike and I at this time of year, we'll get on a few calls, pretty soon it'll be, maybe 2-3 times a week as the call, there's a funneling process in our organization. So, initial contact with initial watching of a player. Somebody likes them, somebody watches them some more. If I like them, then I get Mike to look at them. Maybe we get one of the coaches to look at them too. Maybe we get another scout to look at them. And then it starts moving from there. If everybody, yeah, we like that. That's a good game. Reach out, make contact with the player, have that initial conversation either at the rink or on the phone. And then after that, it's, hey, look, we'd like to either I'm having Mike call directly and talk to him, or we're getting on a conference call with him with the parents. But we've got a pretty much a systematic step-by-step process. So by the time they get to the phone call, the conference call, or our final step with the coach, it's hard to believe there's going to be that much left to answer, just because we pretty much make sure all that information is given to them ahead of time. And if it's not, we're trying to improve. We're always trying to fix those holes and train better. Now this year we haven't had as many quote unquote training sessions as we've had in the past, but we've got a veteran staff, and we got rid of Buzzy, and that made a big difference. So once he was gone, just elevated the whole level of our staff. That's important. The other thing too is that, hey, look, Mike, how many people, players and just players, how many players have you interviewed over the years for teams? Not only your teams that you coach, but for what you do as a player personnel director.
Oh my God! I mean, it's hundreds, if not thousands. So
let me get this straight: you're an adult in a position of authority that's done this hundreds, if not thousands, of times.
Correct.
Okay, how many times does that player that you're talking to usually have dealing with somebody in your capacity?
This might be their first time.
So when you put it in that perspective, an adult or two of us on the phone call, sometimes one of the coaches and you, me and you've got people that have done this for a long time. Parents, don't expect your son to be able to stand up and say, hey, hold my beer, I got this. Hold my Mountain Dew, I got this. Okay? Because they can't. There's no way around it. We're adults. We do this all the time. They're still 17, 18 years old. This is not a fair fight with look, it's posturing. We're in sales. We're trying to sell a team. Okay? That's our job. Our job is to sell that player on a team. They don't always get the objective information they want. Sometimes they get the sales pitch. That's all they're hearing. So they're not asking the right questions, and they feel intimidated to ask the right questions. And we can be the nicest guys in the world. But just remember that, just because we're nice doesn't mean the rest of them are nice. Some of them want to come across with a little bit of a negative sales approach where they're going to be a little bit of jackasses to see how you respond. So I would never, ever, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, let my son or even my daughter, when she played, have that initial conversation. I mean, the hey, how are you? Good, we were interested in you. That's fine. But if you're getting down to the nuts and bolts about getting ready to sign or make a trip down to visit and all the things, that's a parent's got to be involved. Got to be actively involved on the phone call. You agree with that, Mike?
Yeah, and I think if you translate it to something else, if they were not choosing to go and play junior hockey somewhere and they were planning to just go to college, a parent is every bit a part of selecting which college and going on college visits with them and all that other stuff, maybe talking to the academic advisor, different things like that, just like they would be with hockey. It's just weird how sometimes that doesn't translate as, well, we would do this for what school they're going to, but we're going to let them do this for their own hockey career and, figure that out on their own.
And if a coach does say to you, if a coach says to you, hey, your son's going to have to be a big boy here, and they're adults now, and they've got to handle their time with coaches. And you say, Coach, that's fine. Once we're in the program and we decide on you, we get it. That's up to you. And, unless there's any, serious problems or concerns, have at it. That's your job.
Mm-hmm.
But we got to get to know you. We got to make sure that this is the right job, especially at tier 3 when you go, well, Coach, you're right. When he's there, you're the coach. But right now, we're the payers. And mom and dad are going to sit here and we're going to get involved in this conversation because we're not going to write a check unless we like what we hear. And we would hope that you understand that, and you can appreciate that and respect that. And you got to say it in your words in the right way. But that's important to say, because I couldn't fathom. And geez, I probably had 10%, maybe 20% of my players over the years. Now, local kids that in our junior programs that were local and understood who we were, and we've been around them for years on and off. That's different if they walk in with a check and say, "Hey, I'm here to play. Here's my check." It's Tier 3 hockey. But somebody that's moving across the nation or from a foreign country, and the parent, there's honestly, it might be more like 30%. There are people that just never talk to us. We'd reach out and they go, "No, he's got it." We're like 18 years old, and they're writing a check for 10 grand, 12 grand, whatever it was. And boy, it just blows my mind that they didn't take the time or want to, spend some time to get to know the adults that were going to be coaching them on the road with them, on the bus with them, making sure that they're disciplined on the road, that they're not doing silly things. So I just find that's interesting, and I can never figure that out.
Yeah, I think like you said, you put it in a good way of, if you're going to give your kid 10 grand and saying, "Here, go and do whatever you want with it," I don't think too many people are going to do that. They're going to be a part of whatever that decision is. And in this case, it's hockey. If it was, buying a car or buying something else, and you gave your kid that much money to spend, you're going to be involved in that process. And that's okay. They're still not quite adults yet. This is their first time going through these different scenarios. So they do need some help to make sure that they're going to get to the right spot. And even sometimes that doesn't get them to the right spot. But as long as you're a part of the journey with them, you can help make pivots if needed and whatnot. So,
All right. So give us some other questions you got, Mike, that a parent and the player should ask the coaches.
Yeah. So first, I always ask my players to ask their coach or whoever they're talking to, what does that particular program, coach, scout, staff, whoever they're talking with, what do they like about their game? And
Great
I like
question.
them to get that out there, because if they're seeing something that player isn't, then that's something that you guys might want to discuss together. If, he thinks you're a big kid, you're strong, you're going to be this brute force, but you're a big kid that has skill, and kind of the mold or the fit that they think you are as a player doesn't really jive with what you actually are as a player, you might want to get that cleared up. Because obviously if you end up going there and they want to put you in a role that you're not comfortable with, that's not a great situation for you to not only have a good season, but to have fun and to develop and get where you need to be. So that's a good question to ask right off the bat.
That's not only a great question to ask, Mike. I would even say that question should set off alarm bells if it's not answered properly. Okay. In other words, if the coach is going, "Hey, look, we see you as a third or fourth line player, and you already have talked to teams that want you as a first line, or you're coming out of U18 or high school and you've always been a first line player. You've always been one of the leading scorers, if not the leading scorer." Holy smokes. That might be something you're not used to, especially at Tier 3. Now, at Tier 2 or Tier 1, a lot of times you don't really get that option. You want to get on the roster. You literally just want to get on that roster. So that's not the case. But at Tier 3 hockey, if a coach, even says, "Hey, look, we think you're going to be a first line player, and you've always been a second or third line player, and you're a grinder," as a parent, you've got to be objective and knowing what your kid's all about. As a player too, if you think that you can go in and lead a team in scoring, and you've never led a team in scoring your whole career, that's a lot of pressure on you. So I think that's a warning bell question. That's a great question to lead off with, just to see where it's at. And honestly, I would not, if it were me, I would not give them an opportunity to backpedal. I would just go, "Okay, tell me more, and never go, "Oh, well, we see ourselves this way," unless the coach turns around and says, "How do you see yourself?" Well, then you can open up. But if they're going to paint themselves in a corner because either they've categorized you, or they're just making up some BS to make you sound and make you happy, let them paint themselves in a corner. There's other teams. There's especially Tier 3, Tier 2, and Tier 1. Like I said, a little different story, because you're trying to make a roster, and most kids don't have the opportunity to say no to a Tier 2 or a Tier 1 situation. So you have to really, if you do have that opportunity at Tier 2 or Tier 1, hey, good for you. good for you. If you've got several teams that are offering you a tender, good for you. That's awesome. But we're talking about the majority of players out there, and that doesn't really fit for the majority. Jeremy, I see your question out there. We'll get that in a little bit after we talk about this, and then we'll get around to that. Mike, what's next?
So then you want to talk a little bit about their current roster and who are the returners that are coming back, obviously what position they play, just again to see where you're going to slot within that lineup. And then that's kind of the next question based on their answer is, where do you see me fitting in for, your roster and whatnot. And that'll get them, obviously opening up to talk about what's coming back in. And again, this is a feeling out process for both the player to kind of have a good feel for the program and think that the program is, like you said, not BSing them and giving them real information on what their roster is going to look like and how they're going to fit in and things like that. And then it's also a good chance for the program to see, hey, this kid is really interested in understanding what his role is going to be and all those things. But you have to ask it in the right way too, because you don't want to be, well, where do I fit into your roster and kind of come off like, I think I'm so good that I'm going to be a top.
You cannot be cocky in this process. You cannot be cocky. Fully agree. But that's a great question for for another reason too. This when you do this, if you've done your homework, you probably already know where the team stands. And how do you do your homework? You go back and you grab the last 3 or 4 years, especially if it's the same coach. You grab the last 3 or 4 years. You see what his roster started out with at the beginning of the year. You see how it's evolved over the time. You see how many players are aging out, and you see where those players are going after they age out. You do all your homework ahead of time. You know what colleges that team's producing players for. It doesn't matter Tier 3, Tier 2, Tier 1. It could be ACHA, D3, D1. You know where the players are going. You can see them. How many players are getting traded? You can see that information. You pull up Elite Prospects. You pull up the league page, or even pull up their Twitter feed or their social media. And that social media could be Twitter, it could be whatever, but you look at all those things. You look at all the information you got, so that even it's like being a lawyer. A lawyer never asks a question they don't already know the answer to. So the more you already know these questions because you've done your homework on the team, the better off you're going to be.
Because that's when you can see through the BS. You're not guessing on whether or not this coach is being truthful or not. You already know where these players are moving on to. So if you're doing this interview with like a Tier 3 team, like a NA3 or something else, and the coach is telling you he's moving guys on to the North American League or the USHL or to D1 or something like that, you know that the guy's a little overinflating what he can do for your player.
Absolutely,
and that does happen, unfortunately.
After this conversation with the questions that we should be asking, and after we answer a couple questions out there, I want to get into a couple of things that were in the media this week and that are kind of floating around. I think there's some interesting things, and we'll get to that after this. All right, Mike, What else we got?
So then I typically, you kind of touched on it, but you want to know where they're moving their players onto and just kind of get a sense of like what the level is or what some of the connections are that they have to different schools and whatnot, just to make sure that, those are levels or schools that you would want to move on to. So that's a good one. Then you want to get into, and this sometimes comes into more of when the parents start asking questions, but it's, what is your team fees? What's the billet situation look like? Is it, a billet home with, a family that you're staying with? Is it like a dorm or like an apartment setup? Those are all really good questions to ask because certain programs handle that differently. And you may have a preference on what typical like billet style home that player would be living in. And then again, you want to know the fees and how that gets broken down and, a car, or like what's the transportation like to get to the rink? And, are you staying with another player on the team, or is it, one billet for one player, or how does that work? And again, that changes based on the program, or it could even be based on your own preference and what the team allows you to do. But those are questions you want to find out how the organization is going to handle that situation.
So that's a great question, especially at Tier 3. Take the time to really dig into the billet situation. I've seen it all. I've seen 3 kids in a regular basement, cinder block basement with cement floors that are damp and dank, that had to stay in the basement of a house that basically have just these really old army style cots, and that's what they expected kids to live on. And kids don't know any better. They're like, oh, okay, And at first, it's almost like an adventure. Wow, I didn't know this was what junior is all about. No, 1 or 2 kids in the room. Now, when we billeted, I actually had 3, but we had this huge room. They all had their own bed, their own nightstand. They had their own privacy in the room. They had their own closet. They had, the 3 of them shared one bathroom, and they had their own rec room. So they had their own part of the house, and that made it really nice for them and really convenient. So it was kind of like a dorm room setup, but not, they weren't stacked on each other. And they tended to stay, all 3 of them, hang out there during the day and watch TV in the room themselves. They had a TV in there too. And in fact, I think they had a couch in there at the time too. So it became just like a college dorm. Now, right. I think USA Hockey's changed the rules, and they recommend no more than 2. But I can tell you over the years, I know when my son was in Johnstown, there was a billet family there that had 6 kids, and it was a money-making proposition for them. They literally made a big, pot of oatmeal porridge, and it was like Cinderella. We got done with our chores. 1 dollop of porridge, and they would make the most economic meals possible. I mean, meals that you could feed 5 or 6 on for a few dollars. A lot of macaroni and cheese, a lot of and so the kids ended up eating out. They just wouldn't eat at the house anymore. That's exactly what the family wanted, because then they're even bringing in more money, and their cost goes down. So absolutely ask those questions. You want to know how involved those coaches are with their billet program. Do they really go out and audit them? Do they stop in and see what the living conditions are like? Have they ever been out in the houses? And you just literally ask those questions, because the billet situation, as much as it sounds like it's harmless, maybe it's a little tougher to live in that house than it is. No, it can make a team a living hell if they don't have a good, solid foundation to come home to. They don't have to be, nurturing people. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. But they got to be at least good stewards of the house. House has got to be clean. They got to have an area to go to where they have privacy. They have to have, their own bathroom. I'll tell you another story. In Shreveport, the first billet my son had when he got traded to Shreveport was a single lady that Adam had to walk through her room to get to the shower. So if he wanted to take a shower at night after he got home, he had to walk through her bedroom to get to the shower and then walk back through her bedroom again. Very awkward. Very awkward. And
I might not mind that situation back in the day.
Back in the day, but I'm not sure if I was kind of looking at it through different eyes. When it's your son, you look at it from different eyes. You're right. Single man might have looked at it a little differently. All right, what other questions we got?
So now we're kind of switching into, if you notice the theme of the questions, it's first, how do I fit onto the team? Then it's more, okay, if I'm here, how am I living and what's that situation like? Then it kind of switches into, what's the typical day look like? What time are the practices? What time am I waking up, and what am I doing through each part of the day? Is there, how many days per week do we practice? For how long? What do we do from an off ice standpoint, a workout? Are we lifting? Are we doing cardio? Like, what's the process, and who are we working with? Are they trainers? Is it on-site, off-site? Where are all these things? And then it comes down to, like, when are we doing video, and what's the schedule look like when it comes to, that whole process? And then another one I know a lot of kids like is there any additional time throughout the day open that I can get on the ice to do maybe more individual skill type stuff and whatnot? So just having a better understanding of what that setup is like from a rink and schedule standpoint.
So the 3 questions that every league has numerous teams that they just flat out lie on. It doesn't matter what level. Here's 3 things that teams lie about. They lie about how many times you watch video a week and how often they're actually using video and how important video is to their programs. Now, some programs are religious about video, and other programs, maybe once every other week or maybe not at all. It's just, and that's something you've really got to make sure that you can kind of get the sense, is that just BS or is that the truth? The other question is about workouts. Teams will they'll make shit up. Oh, yeah, we've got a licensed trainer. We've got a gym that everybody goes to. We work out 4 days a week. And then you find out at the end of practice, the coach goes, hey, stop in the gym and do 3 sets of squats before you get out of here. Or just says, hey, make sure you get in the gym after practice. Literally just says that. Make sure you get in the gym after practice. No supervision, no monitoring, no plan. And, so a few guys might stroll in, or maybe there's a sign-up sheet that you got to sign in and you got to hang out in there for a few minutes. But that's once again, you have to really get a sense. That's why it's so important, too, that if a team offers you to come in and watch practice or come in and spend a day or a couple days with a team and skate, do it, because then you can see if they're BSing you or if they're telling you the truth on how they go about their business. We're fortunate. Mike and I work for a very transparent, very straightforward program. All that stuff gets done to the point where you're like, holy smokes, it's a long day. I got a lot of stuff to do. I got to get ready for video. We got workouts after practice. We got team meetings. And that's the other one. The third question coaches will lie about, and I did a video on this. I don't know how long ago I did it, but I'll pull it up and make sure I make it current again. That is how many times they're meeting with you individually to give you structure and feedback. They'll say, oh, yeah, we meet with our players weekly. I can tell you right now, it's hard for coaching staffs to meet with players one-on-one weekly. Some do it, and some bust their butt to do it right. And they usually are the teams that are on top. They're usually the teams that extra work pays off for them. So make sure you take the time to once again, if you can get down and visit the team, if you can kind of walk, even as a parent, if they let you come in and kind of, spend a day in a distance. I know when my son went up to the AJHL to play, they invited me up to, and I didn't go in the locker room, but I got to be around and spend the whole day. My son did all the activities. I just kind of stood back and watched, but it was watching the coaching staff walk through a pre-meeting to explain what's going to happen on the ice in practice, a post-meeting to talk about what they did in practice, individual meetings with film, team meetings with film during the same day, workouts, individual skill stuff on the ice. And it was really incredible to see. And you could tell it wasn't a dog and pony show. They weren't doing this because we were there. In fact, they did it in spite of the fact that we were there. Right. They were gonna get through it no matter what. We were, I'm sorry, you can come and visit us, but we got a job to do first, and we'll try to help you get a chance to see everything we're doing. So I think that's incredibly important. But video workouts and meetings, those are 3 things that you got to talk about, because that's where most teams fail. I'm going to say right now, most teams fail to do all those 3 things right.
Yep. And the thing that people have to realize, the reason why it's good to go through all these different questions is not all teams are created equal in any league. If you look at the USHL, which is the highest junior league, the difference between the Chicago Steel and another program is significant. And that you can go down the list of different programs and what they offer. Same thing in the North American League. And then when you get into Tier 3, the disparity could be even bigger, between what one program offers and what another program does. So that's where, again, you got to do your homework. You got to ask these questions, and then you want to get a feel for how honest you think this conversation is going. And if you're not getting the right vibe, then you're getting out of the conversation what you need, that maybe this isn't the right fit for you. And that's why it's important to kind of go through this stuff.
Awesome. What we got next?
So next, you're going to want to know when it comes to travel. Obviously, what does that look like from a food standpoint? The hotels. If you're probably taking a bus, most likely, but within that, like what type of bus? Is it one that the team owns? Is it one that they have to rent every time that they're going on a different trip? And kind of get a better sense of what the road is like for these different players.
Yeah, that's a tough one. You really got to hone in on that because teams will say, "Oh yeah, we feed every player after the games." So the rule usually is if it's an overnight trip, uh, the kids show up to get on the bus at whatever time you're leaving. They've already had their breakfast or their breakfast and lunch, depending on what time the bus leaves. The bus usually, uh, once again, depends on how long the trip is. If you're going to get there early. Now, you play tier 2 or tier 1. Sometimes the team travels the day before a game. Where you get there and you have a morning skate, so you're having breakfast and lunch and even maybe an early dinner before your game. Just depends. Tier 3, it's very common to travel the same day of the game and go straight to the rink. So, you might stop halfway there. The team usually doesn't pick up the meal prior to the game. So if you're on the bus and it pulls into a rest stop and you decide to get a salad or some chicken or something or a chicken wrap, that's usually on you on the way to the game. The team will pick up the meal afterwards. Now, I know in our program, you could tell when I was traveling with the team before I was the coach, they'd love to see me on the bus because that meant we were going to get Olive Garden catered in, and they were going to have chicken parm and fettuccine Alfredo and spaghetti, bread, salads, and a lot of drinks, a lot of Gatorades, waters, and things like that. However, when I was not on the bus, they get concerned because the coaches had per diem for the team, and they were given cash for how much they could spend on the team. And what they would do is they would buy 10 cheese pizzas, not even pepperoni, not with everything on them, just 10 cheese pizzas, and they toss them on the bus for the bus drive from the bus to the hotel, so that the food was split up however the kids were going to split it up. And usually it's you get a half a large pizza. That's kind of the norm for traveling. And then they pocketed the rest of the money, and and
Right.
that frustrated the hell out of me because you find out about that, and then you got to try to correct it, and it becomes now I'm talking about an ownership issue there. But that used to drive me nuts when they just throw pizzas on the bus. Now, I got no problem throwing pizzas on the bus if you go, hey, here's some pizzas that's 30 minutes back to the hotel. Once you're at the hotel, we got subs for you too. We got subs and Gatorade for you too, and have a good night. Or we're going to a buffet. Have at it at the buffet, and then we'll call it a night. But just to give them some cheese pizza from Domino's and call it a night, no, absolutely not. That's but that's 80% of the teams out there do the cheese pizzas or pepperoni pizzas on the bus, and they call it a day. So, and almost every hotel that is used in junior hockey has a free breakfast in the morning. And so if you don't like that, because come on, most of those places, no matter how much you want to complain, they usually have scrambled eggs, some kind of meat, toast, and some kind of potato. That's a norm. Sometimes they've got on the side they'll also have biscuits and gravy. You can say, well, that's not good for me. I got a game today. That's why we're here. We're playing hockey. Well, most of them have a lot of fruit, bananas, apples, sometimes even oranges. They've got oatmeal. They've got regular dry cereal. It's a breakfast buffet. Even the smaller hotels or the chain hotels at a lower price, usually that's all those things are the norm. Now, it might not be the scrambled eggs you like. It might not be exactly gourmet to what your taste is, but there's usually a pretty good selection there. You can eat there, and if you don't, prepare ahead of time. That's what's being. Where you're going to stay at that hotel, and a lot of times because you're traveling, there's only 3 or 4 hotels on the road that you stay at. You know what you're going to get after you've been through the circuit once as a rookie, and if you don't like that, you're more than welcome to bring your own. Across the board.
Yeah, it's definitely, junior hockey is not a glamorous lifestyle, so don't be surprised when you get there to find out that it's not an NHL team that you're playing for.
Oh, we got a comment here. Let's see what. Well, first of all, we got to say hi to Andrew Zom. He says hello from New Brunswick, Canada. Andrew, thank you for checking in. Always good to see you on. And then Buzzy's coming in. Let's see what he's got. He's got a lot to say here. Let's see if his comment coming. Program is now defunct, but heard a story about a coach who would bring food on the bus, make food sandwiches for his players, and the players would have to pay the coach for the sandwich. I've heard that story. I've heard coaches that have a little buffet up in the front. I never heard about the paying for it, but I've heard lots of times that you get 2 pieces of bread and you either put peanut butter and jelly on it, or you get 1 piece of ham and some mayonnaise, or 1 piece of bologna and mayonnaise, and that's what you get. I've heard those stories. So, holy smokes, yeah, we could do a whole show on shitty bus rides and shitty, yeah. So
it's all part of the experience. It really is.
It is. Oh, what else we got on the list?
I mean, that's it. I mean, you can get into more of like the roster management that the program does, but a lot of that you're going to do on your own. If you go to Elite Prospects and you see that there's 70 kids that played for that team throughout the year, they might be streaming some players. So it's always good to kind of have an idea of like what their philosophy is on trading players, or, if you're going to take a chance at, this is the program I want to play at, what are they going to do with you as an asset? Are they just going to send you somewhere else that you didn't want to play for, or how do they handle those different trade requests or trades that they end up making?
So Tier 3 and Tier 2 and Tier 1 are all different when it comes to how many guys are in the stands. So nowadays, because you can dress 21, you can dress your 2 goalies, and you can dress 19 players now. There's 21 players going to dress. Usually it's 4 lines, 60, and an extra forward or an extra D, and then your 2 goalies. Some teams might dress 3 goalies and not dress the extra forward or D. But that's changed in the last few years. So you got 21 there. Like the North American Hockey League is 23. I believe the USHL is 23 right now. I haven't looked to see what their number is, but that sounds reasonable. And it sounds like I know what I'm talking about if I just say 23. But the number's higher. And since you've got uncontrolled leagues out there, there are teams out there that are playing in the quote-unquote uncontrolled leagues, the non-USA hockey leagues, that can have 30 guys on a team.
And more.
Or more. And yeah, they've got a protected list. And yes, there's they can only use so much in that game because that's the kids they put down on the protected list. But it's almost like you see a full separate team sitting in the stands sometimes. You're like, holy smokes, they got a JV program? What's going on here? But that's something you got to talk to them about is, hey, we hear you have 10 people in the stands. What's the difference between, is that where I'm going to end up if I'm with a team? And once again, you've got to have a lot of faith in a program that's got 10 people in the stands, that you're unique, you're different. And right. So I'd be very, very careful with the number of players on the team. Now, if they say, hey, look, if you notice all those guys in the stands, they're all 06s, or they're all 06s and 07s. We're working them in gently, or they're on the team because they don't have any other place to play. We function with them. They all get in as much as possible. We rotate them in. If there's a plan, that's great. So that'd be one thing I'd worry about. The other thing is that I would be asking questions about is type of coach and style, and in the things that the coach does. Coach, tell me about yourself. How do you discipline on this team? That's a great question. Find out if there's a system or a philosophy on discipline, or if it's just I just whatever. When it comes up, I take care of it. That's not really a good answer, because players love to know exactly what the rules are. For every team, they want to know the rules. They want to know what the discipline is, because if you're serious, you want to know that the non-serious players are going to get taken care of properly, okay? And if you're non-serious, you want to know how much trouble you're going to get in when you drink those beers in the hotel. So one way or the other, you want to know what the rules are. And I'm joking a little bit, but kids are kids. And when I say kids, anything 21 and under is a kid when it comes to junior hockey. So I definitely want to know about the style of on-ice play. What systems do you use? And then watch games. See if he's just making stuff up. I can tell you that over the years, I've watched coaches give some unbelievable talks about their systems with parents. And they can draw them out and they can show them everything. You go to a practice or watch the game and none of it happens because they understand how to put it on paper, but they're not teachers and they don't do a very good job of teaching that system or that thought process and that philosophy on the ice. So, really, you got to have, part of this is you've got to ask questions and then you got to read what you're getting. You got to take all this information and, as a player, you got to really make sure that you're setting yourself up for success. And it's like anything else. If I told my 16-year-old, hey, we're going to go out and get a car today, he knows he's not going to get a Corvette. But if I told my 16-year-old I'm going to get a car and we pull on the car lot and there's a bright red, shiny 4-door sedan, he's going to get all hyped if he knows it's his. He's going to get all excited about that car if he knows it's his. And maybe that's not the best analogy, but my point is you can't get too excited. And as a parent, part of the job that, from my perspective, is to keep everybody in check. Even parents get excited about this process. Everything's got to be in check. You've got to be very objective. And you've got to, if the emperor has no clothes on, you got to notice that. You gotta get in the car on the way home and go, hey, you know what? I don't see it, and here's why. Now you might, have some conversations that tries to draw that out from your player, so that your child, so that they come to the conclusion without you, where you're putting that bad spot as a parent, where you've got to tell them what they got to do. But man, oh man, that's the whole idea here. The other thing I'd say on this is
your analogy, though, of dropping your son off at the car dealership is perfect. You just didn't connect the right dots, but it would be if you just let him out and said, hey, go talk to this salesman and, figure out what car you want. Of course, when it comes to finding out how many miles are on it and what's the different safety features and when's the last time it was tuned up and what are the brakes like? Yeah, all of these different things. The kid is not going to really know to ask these questions because they're going to be so excited that they're going to be getting that red car that's parked out there, that they're looking at what it looks like on the outside and some of the other maybe features from a technology standpoint. And that's all they care about. Whereas parents are going to start looking at some of these other things that are equally as important, if not more important, to the success of, in this case, their development and where they're going to end up as a player. And in the analogy, being able to drive the car wherever they want to go without it being on the side of the road and being a lemon that they just purchased.
Okay, so I got to show you this because now that we're talking about this, it's important. Let me get over here to our proper screen, which is not that screen.
Ooh.
That was my first car. It's an Opel Kadett. Now,
are those blue?
This isn't the real car because this looks like it's off the showroom floor. My car, when I bought it for $187, and I had to have 3 friends and a tractor get it from the gas station I bought it from back to my house. We lived in the country. I had no brake line, so I fashioned a brake line to the front right wheel. It had one brake on the front right wheel. So the gas tank on my model was on the left side, left rear side over here, where you put the gas in. I had a hockey stick where I stuck it down in there to see how much gas I had in there. I either had 1 inch, 2 inches, 3 inches. I wasn't rich, so I never had more than 3 inches of gas in the tank. I don't know what a full tank was. I don't think I ever had a full tank in there. And but the reason I brought that up is because that car meant the world to me. $187 car, holes in the floorboard. You couldn't drive in the rain because you'd get wet. It would fill up with water on the floorboards. And I bring that up because it meant everything, because it was the first. And it was the first car, and I got excited, and I loved it. And that's what you got to fight. You really got to fight in junior hockey, is you don't fall in love with a team just because they got great uniforms, or just because they won a championship last year, or just because your buddy thinks it's the best thing in the world. So the last thing, in my opinion, the last thing, unless you've got something else, Mike, is there's a tipping point. And there's a tipping point on being a good parent and asking the right questions in the right way, and being a jackass. And you got to be careful on how far you push these questions and how you go about it. It's got to be respectful. They got to be leading open-end questions, and it can't come across like you got a gotcha moment coming up, or you got an aha, I knew you guys are jackasses. Okay, you as a parent are trying to collect information. Once you gather all that information, you can take it home and distill it and come up with all those conclusions. But the idea there is not to try to, catch them. You want to catch them, but you just don't want them to know you're catching them. You don't want to spring a trap on them in the conversation. You just want to get that information as clearly as you can. So some of these things you might not be able to delve down as deep as you want on the subject, because then you're putting yourself in a bad spot where they just go, screw this. This looks like these parents and this kid's a pain in the ass. We're going to move on to the next kid. So just be careful. You can push questions so far, but I'd be very cautious on pushing them over the edge where the coach gets exasperated with you and then it doesn't do you any good.
Yeah, that's a really good point to make. And I think, we gave a lot of different examples of questions to ask. I don't know if it depends on how the conversation is going, but I don't know that you get through all of these questions in your conversation. They may come up, and sometimes some of these questions that we said to ask when the staff is first introducing themselves and kind of, getting the meeting started, they may share this information where you don't even have to ask the question because they've just told it to you to begin with. And a lot of times that comes into, how do you see my game and whatever else, because they'll come out and say, hey, we like you because of X, Y, and Z. It's like, great. Well, then I don't have to ask these questions. They've already shared it, because you don't want to go into it as if you're interrogating them. It's got to be a conversation, and hopefully you're getting these questions out there. So, for people who are listening, definitely jot down the different questions so you remember them. And there's probably some you think are more important than others, and make sure that those are the ones that you're asking when you're in these conversations, because the last thing you want to do is have your son, go into the conversation and not ask any questions, and then you don't know anything about the program, and it makes the decision that much more difficult to decide.
That was my senior year. That's the car I had.
That's pretty fantastic.
Nice. What's that?
That's a convertible model, huh?
Oh, baby. It was everything.
I still wish that other car you showed with the blue mud flaps was actually your car.
Mud flaps. I don't have anything. You can't screw in mud flaps to rust. I don't know how I would have done that. That would have been a trick that I don't have. Anyway, so let's chat about a couple other things. We got a question that came in, and I want to get back to that. Jeremy asked the question. He goes, if your son is already in junior hockey, should you be looking for an advisor to move on to college? Woo. So, yeah. First of all, Jeremy, that's pretty vague. Not knowing the level, what year, how good your son is, and what league he's in, what team he's playing for, what's been done. I mean, if he's in his last year and you're just thinking about college now, and trying to figure out where you're going to college now, hiring an advisor at this point is not cost effective, nor are you really going to get a bang for the buck out of it. And I don't know if many advisors would take anybody on. Now, if you got years to go, in other words, he's young and he's got 1-2 years of juniors left after this season, that's a personal choice. I would say that after you've got everything done you're supposed to do, the marketing side of a player is still the player's and the family's responsibility. It's your job to get the emails out. It's your job. An advisor can can follow up and say, hey, did you see so-and-so send an email to you? Did you get that email, coach? Or, hey, look, I know my player's been sending you emails this year. If you've looked at them, here's what I think. And they can open doors and they can talk to coaches, but they're not miracle workers, nor in the true sense of it. Now, over time, it's turned into where they help you get on teams, and that's they're the magic key to get you onto the team. When this first started, and what an advisor was supposed to do is just that, advise you. Well, you might want to look at this type of school. You might want to stay away from that. And that's what they did. Now it's turned into where, it's wholly incumbent on them to get you on a team. And that's not going to happen if you're just getting into it now. So, I mean, if you want to give us a little more information, please do. I'd be glad to know a little bit more about, the situation as much as you can tell on an open show like this. But I'd be very, very careful on that. Just hiring an advisor at the last second. Mike, what are your thoughts?
Well, I know the last name, and I think Jeremy's commented before. I'm pretty sure his son plays in the North American League for a pretty good program, but I'm not sure that he's in his last year of junior eligibility. So I would just say from a timing standpoint, the thing to keep in mind is usually the USHL players, they'll commit early to whatever school they're going to go to. For tier 2, whether it's the NA or the NCDC, and for sure tier 3 when it comes to NA3 or USPHL, most players are not going to receive their college commitment until the last year of their junior eligibility. And it's usually the last half of that last year, and people are so stressed out. And
it could be the last week of the last year. And I'm not kidding you because, my son played on Shreveport when they went to the Robertson Cup 2 years ago when they won it. The big talk up there with the 4 final teams were how many guys had still not committed yet. And you talk to the college coaches up there, they were all looking to try to get things done that week. And there were probably 20 programs in the building, maybe 25 programs in the building, and they're always all looking to do things that week. Okay, and that's ACHA all the way up through the Big Ten. The whole gamut. We're looking at players there to fill the roles because they fill the team with their superstar players are all younger, still in prep, maybe still playing Minnesota high school, maybe still playing U16. The guys that they know that they're that's going to be their skilled guys. Okay, and those guys are going to end up going to the USHL, and then they'll split between the BC and the North American Hockey League. They're going to go that way. Some will stay on the East Coast because they're going to play NCDC because they're going to be East Coast kids. They're going to go to Holy Cross, and the Holy Cross coach wants them close so he can watch them play and things like that. Now, with that said, now you kind of got a sense of what's out there. North American Hockey League, there's no other way to say it. It's the backfill. Okay, it's a great league, but it's older players and it's the backfill for everything else. That sounds horrible. We're in the North American Hockey League. We work there. My kid came through that as a product of the league, but they're not. You're not on the forefront, and you're not on you're not a top of mind at the beginning of the season. They might know who you are, but there's a reason why they do it the way they do it. They make sure all their pieces in place. They want to see what players are returning next year. What kids got injured during the season? What kid's going to come back as a graduate student that they didn't know? Especially because of the pandemic, we're still working on this backfill thing. Okay, meaning everything got pushed back because kids got an extra year of eligibility. You're seeing kids now that it used to be a lot for a kid to be at a school for 5 years. But now because of an injury and because you got an extra pandemic year, you're seeing kids at schools now for, or in college hockey now for 6 years. They got redshirted, they got their 4 years of eligibility, and they got their pandemic year. It's incredible. So that changed everything. The portal changed everything because that portal opens up And all of a sudden these teams are going, and they all know it ahead of time. If there's a kid that wants to go, leave Dartmouth, and I'm using Dartmouth, I'm not picking on Dartmouth, and they want to go to Western Michigan, okay, whoever in the world would want to go to that school, I don't know.
Well, the smarter kids.
Yeah, some. Don't put yourself in that category.
Oh, I'm definitely not.
So let's say they want to go to Western. That Western coach knows that kid's interested in going there before the portal opens up. They may not have talked directly, but they know. So once those all are tweaked out, then they come into the North American League and they start finishing up the chessboard. We need a rook. We need a pawn. We need whatever they need, they start putting those pieces in. So I would say this, if you're in the North American Hockey League, just play it out. I don't really, if there's a league that you don't need, much help, most of the coaches, if you're on a veteran team with a veteran coach, they're having conversations daily with coaching staffs, college coaching staffs, and college coaches are reaching out to them daily. If you're not getting that, then it's a different story, and maybe you do have to reach out to an advisor. But, I can tell you right now, my experience with most of the coaches in the North American Hockey League is that they spend too much time talking to colleges. And I'm talking about Amarillo, Shreveport, Lone Star, Aberdeen, all these programs, Johnstown, I can keep going on and on and on. They spend a lot of time on the phone. With college coaches. So hopefully that helps a little bit. Now that you got to see what else here we got here. Edmonton, Alberta, WHL Scout. Love the show, guys. Good to hear that. Thanks for coming on. Appreciate it. Always good to hear somebody else that does it, that comes on and likes what we're talking about. Kyle comes on from Frisco, Texas. I don't know if I've seen Frisco on here before. Kyle, great, glad to have you.
I think we had a Brahmas jersey in that little icon.
He says, my son played versus yours a few times. He's a great player. It must be your son that you don't know about, Mike. I appreciate it.
As long as I'm not paying, it doesn't count.
Kyle, who's your son play for? Or was that at 16-18s or juniors? Thanks for the comment, though.
Might be our 3HL goaltender.
It might be. Frank says, tell him to watch more of your videos. He'll learn a lot. Frank, man, we got to put you on the payroll. Yeah, you're just too kind to us. I want you to say, hey, look, I want to talk about a couple things real quick before we go. First of all, a lot of scuttle, a lot of talk, a lot of, and this is mostly coming from the parents. It is not coming from, it's not coming from anybody in the industry right now, from what I can tell. Meaning there's talk about there's some other entity that calls themselves a news source, but are actually advisors, put out information this week saying, the sky is going to change. There's going to be lightning bolts coming out in the next few months. Don't sign with a team at any level because, the world of hockey is going to change. Well, it might, but first of all, if you've got, let's put this in perspective. This is most likely talking about the new league coming out of California, Major Junior League. It might be dealing with a situation with Major Junior Hockey changing the relationship they have with the NCAA. All those things are possible. All those things are in conversation. I can tell you this. The source of the information is not the first person that the NCAA goes to when they're breaking these stories. So just keep that in mind. We try to be very credible. We do not talk rumors here. We try to give you, true information when it actually happens. So anything that's out there saying, oh, this major decision's coming down the pike in the next few months, okay, maybe it is. I can tell you this. If you're a Tier 1 player, there's nothing that's going to change going to the USHL. There's nothing, if they change the rules and they let the OHL participate at the same level as the USHL, that shouldn't change a thing in your world because the USHL is that good, okay? If the rules change and that happens with the OHL still has their first and foremost priority and that's going to stay the same. So if you're a BCHL or a null guy, most likely you're going to want to stay right there, because those are already tried, true, tested processes to move you through the system to get you to college hockey. If those other leagues open up, good for them. But there's still the vast majority of those players are still headed one way. That's what they put themselves in that situation, and that's what they're doing. Remember, a Canadian kid playing in the major junior system, any kid playing in the major junior system, can still go play college hockey. They're given money to go play college hockey. They just couldn't play NCAA eligible hockey. They could play ACHL. They could go and play U Sport in Canada. There was lots of options there. So I wouldn't look at this and go, oh my gosh, hold up, don't sign with that null team because don't tender because something big's coming. First of all, I've heard this over the last 5 years from the same source numerous times on numerous issues, and I wouldn't get worked up about it. First of all, number one. Number two, let it happen. Make sure it accurately happens. So you're going to hold off and potentially pass up on an opportunity with a tender, or you get drafted and go into a main camp because you heard a rumor that something's going to happen. I would not, in any circumstances, take the advice of somebody that's not in the inner circles, that's not connected, and doesn't work in the industry to take that risk. Mike, I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Well, I mean, it seems like the only real issue that if what we're saying actually happened would be at the college level. It's got nothing to do with the junior level. And when it comes to a league in Canada, there's still import restrictions and whatever else. So, I mean, it's kind of like creating drama and hysteria over something that may or may not happen. And if it did happen, what does it actually look like? So if you don't have all the information, why would you be making decisions as if you did? None of us do.
KS says, thanks for addressing the rumor. I heard it a week ago and it was scratching my head. My first question was, isn't the USHL and the US Major Junior League? I can't see what I'm missing there. That last part. But KS, the USHL is the way to go, in my opinion, across the board, because you get the best of both worlds. If you're good enough to get drafted, which a ton of kids get drafted out of that league, remember, even without the National Development Program, the USHL still has more players per team drafted in the NHL than any other league, including these major junior leagues. I did Mike and I did a whole broadcast on this where we broke down the numbers. And, the numbers are phenomenal for that league. There's nothing wrong with those other leagues, those major junior leagues. But if the rule changes, first of all, I hardly doubt that they're going to throw it on everybody right away, like without any heads up. Usually, look what happens in football. If the leagues change, or even a schedule change, it changes for 2 years, 3 years down the road. If new teams are going to come into a league, usually it's for 2 or 3 years down the road. I would imagine that if this is coming into play, that there's going to be a little bit more lead time on this than next year. I could be wrong. I've been wrong once.
If you look at college football and they just had the team shifting and the realignments of the SEC and now the Big Ten and everything, and for a while people were losing their minds, and now the dust kind of settles, and all it is it's just some movement that has happened. It's not hurting anyone. It's not losing opportunities for anyone. All it is just different teams are joining different divisions or leagues or conferences, whatever you want to call it. And if that happens with how the major junior and NCAA, what the current rule is with those two leagues or levels, I guess, change. Okay. They make a change and then we all adjust to it. It's not, something where everyone's got to freak out and different levels are going to be different. And you shouldn't sign certain places. It's like, it's all status quo, because at some point there could be no change and you don't want to make decisions based on, half truths.
Okay, so the other thing I wanted to do is I wanted to share. Mike sent this to me earlier today. This has been making its rounds. I've seen it on different parts of social media. Let me see if I can get it up to a screen that doesn't, I'm trying to pull it off your feed, Mike. So yeah, I don't know if it's going to show up well. No, it's not. Anyway, I'll give you a sense of it. There's something going around on Twitter, and it's from a parent, and basically it's a parent writing to the coach and going, "Hey, look, I used to coach basketball, youth basketball," and the parent actually lays out his structure. I had 3 groups. I had the top group, the middle group, and the bottom group, and I'd play my top group. Pretty much what he was saying is the top group played every game, and he'd platoon the second group and the third group in a little bit and rotate that, which was got the second amount of floor time or minutes in basketball. And then basically broke down the whole roster for the coach, telling him which is where his top group, his middle group, and his bottom group. And basically, through the whole thing is, if you want to win, this is the way you should do it. Oh, just my opinion at the end. Just my opinion. That type of thing happens at every level. And when I say that happens at every level, had a player out of Rochester. I worked with him a little bit. Tried to recruit him to play at RIT when I was coaching at the college level. Clearly, he was a much better player than I projected. He ended up being a really good college hockey player, a really, really good college hockey player. Got drafted and left college and went straight to the St. Louis Blues. Dad went out with him on the visit. This is when Keenan was coaching the St. Louis Blues. Now, for some of you younger bucks out there that don't know much about Mike Keenan, I'm a Marine, and I probably would be afraid to play for this guy. Okay. This guy was old school before they had the term old school. And this guy was, he's kind of that cower from Pittsburgh. He used to have his chin stuck out. Just, come on, try to take that shot at me. That's the kind of guy Mike Keenan was. Not afraid of anybody, no player on the ice, no management, nothing scared that guy. And he was also quick to, if you don't like it, hit the highway kind of coach. So this player out of Rochester, know the family well. His little brother played for me. His little brother. Family is really a good family, except Dad had that tendency to want to tell coaches how things work. And so the way it happened was his son got to St. Louis as a rookie into the year. They bring the college kid up, and maybe they even get a chance to play in the playoffs if the team makes a run. And they're fresh because they've only got 20-something games under their belt, while the pros are in their counting exhibition season. They're in their 90th game plus by the time playoffs roll around, maybe even 100 during the playoffs. Practice, the dad goes to practice, sits up in the stands, gets done with practice, walks down with the team as the team's coming off the ice and goes, "Hey, coach, how are you?" And the coach, being a nice guy, new kid on the team, sees the parent, goes, "Hey, how are you, Mr. XXX?" And Mr. XXX goes, "Good to see you, coach. I thought I'd tell you a little bit of what I saw on the power play today." This is a rookie kid that's been on the team for 2 or 3 days, and the dad had the audacity to go up to Mike Keenan and say, "This is what I thought I saw in the power play today," and to put a plug in for his kid on the power play.
Okay.
So this is not a made up story.
I wish it was.
The kid's agent got a call immediately, and it was a one-time call from Keenan saying, "Okay, it happened once. It happens again. Not only is he not going to see the daylight here, but he probably won't see the daylight on our AHL team, and maybe we'll get around to trading him someday." That's how pissed off he was. You can do that with the NHL team, but my only point of saying that is it doesn't happen just at Squirts. Parents that are like that, they honestly think they know more than coaches all the way up. Okay, right. Now there are obvious things that coaches make mistakes on, and maybe you see them as a parent. But if you got even a little inkling of that in you, keep it to yourself. Keep it to yourself. Don't try to outcoach the coach. Don't think that you're slicker than the coach, even if you coach. I've been very fortunate over the years to have numerous NHL coaches, Division I, Division III coaches with their kids. The current head coach and associate head coach of RT, their kids played in our program. They played on our junior teams. Randy Cunneyworth was he was first the Montreal Canadiens head coach, and then he was on the Buffalo Sabres head coaching staff. His kid played for us. Guess how much coaching advice they gave us across the board? They come in our office and hang out and shoot the shit, but never once overstepped that boundary because they couldn't see the day-to-day practices. They couldn't see the problems and the issues and the chess match that the coaches were making. And by gosh, I'm no Randy Cunneyworth as a coach. I know that. But he respected enough to allow us to do our job as a coach and get things done. So my only point is stay away from any of just don't do it. Just don't do it.
And in the scenario that person was laying out for that coach, it doesn't even translate. It's not even the same sport. And my whole thing is when you're talking about playing your top line, or your top, 5 players or whatever in basketball, because if you read what that was the guy did not coach the team. He coached the team for one tournament and they won the tournament. So it was like a weekend. And he was saying how, like, at the very beginning, like game 1, I played my best players most of the time, and then some of the bottom players some of the time. And then by the end, it was none of the bad players ever played, and then just the good players played the whole time to win the championship. And it's like, you realize in hockey there's line changes, and the players are interchanging every minute or 45 seconds, depending on the level you're coaching. It's impossible to have your best guys out there every single moment. It doesn't even translate. You can't do that in hockey. And,
I again, that guy drives an Opel Kadett.
It's funny though, because you get that a lot. And, like your point, the guys that coach high level hockey that probably could have really good insights and opinions, they very rarely share it because they don't coach the team of their kid. And they know that whatever message that coach is sharing with the group, that's the message, whether it's right, wrong, or indifferent. That's your coach, and you listen to what he's saying, and you go about it that way. I mean, within the program I coach, we're fortunate we have most of the Chicago Blackhawks players' kids, and we currently have the current coach of the Blackhawks kids in our program. Nicest guy that can be, loves what we do, like talks to us about, just getting to know like what style we run, because again, youth is way different than NHL as far as, the different systems and things that they're running, but, just curious to know, but doesn't say, hey, why don't you think about doing this? Or why wouldn't you do that? He's just, curious to know. And it's the parents that a lot of times think they know best, and in most cases have never coached the game, but have watched it on TV enough to have an opinion on what to do.
Troy, you might be right. Keenan is a younger version of Herb Brooks. I'm very fortunate to have known Herb, and I don't know Mike Keenan as well, but I agree with you. I don't know if Herb Brooks was honestly. I think Keenan might be one of the biggest hard asses, right or wrong, that I've ever come across in coaching. I mean, there's some jackasses. I don't call him a jackass, that can act like they know it all, and because one of the easiest things to do as a coach is to act like you know what you're doing by screaming and yelling and pinching people and doing things like that. That's not coaching. But Keenan, he's one of those guys that I honestly think can get the most out of a team for 1 to 3 years, and then the act gets old for players, and it's time to move on for both him and the players. That's just the way I read him. I read him as he might motivate a team with his style, and that's why you see, in my opinion, in college football, you see more hard asses coaching college football than you do in the pro level, because a pro coach might have to be with a guy for 6, 8, 10, 12 years, where a college football coach gets him for 2 to 4 years,
right?
Five if the kid redshirts, and so they can they can be a little bit more intense, a little more in your face, a little bit louder, and do things and have more direct impact on the player that way. But anyway, I agree with your point on that. Let's see if we get one more, and then we're going to call it a night. What do you think about the new Colorado girls team?
Grits team, not girls team.
Oh. Well, maybe it is the girls' team. I don't know. Hey, go ahead and answer that, Mike. I already stuck my foot in my mouth.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think we have addressed it before, but I think from a program standpoint, they're off to a good start in getting the right type of coaches to come in there. They're fortunate of where they're located that Colorado has really good AAA hockey. So if they're able to, keep kids close to home and give them that opportunity, they already have kind of a pipeline that's in their backyard to bring these different players in. So, I think like anything else, it takes a little bit to get up and running. You're not going to get, some of the top players that, historically, maybe the Lone Stars and the Aberdeens and, the programs that are always typically at the very top, the Shreveports get, because they're more proven. So this program is going to have to prove themselves a little bit. But again, if they start pulling from their backyard, it's going to help them because there's good hockey already there. And then it's up to them to make an impact. And we've seen teams come into the league and make a strong impact. If you look at New Mexico, it didn't take them long to get up and running and basically get to a championship. And then you see Danbury struggling to start. And so it's what makes one successful and one struggle. It's the staff that they put in place.
Staff they put in place across the board. Ownership is part of that staff. Having support, like you said, New Mexico is the gold star standard of a new program coming in and doing it right now. They've also got an extremely wealthy ownership group that has University of Minnesota ties. The family is endeared up there to that program. So I don't know the ownership group of the new program coming in. I can tell you, though, they've got an inherent ace in the whole home field advantage with altitude, just like New Mexico. Most people don't know that. Albuquerque is at 6,000 plus feet. So there's already that Denver, Colorado kind of air. So teams that go into New Mexico, especially coaches that are new to the league, they don't pay attention to that. Players don't believe it, and then they usually are lethargic that first game, maybe even both games, and they wonder why, and that's because of the altitude. Those teams have a huge advantage. Both those teams will have a huge advantage in the South because of that. So not only is it a long trip to travel to, but, boy, oh boy, then having to play in altitude, that's going to be a really good advantage for them. So, yeah, I don't know how good they'll be the first year. Is there, Mike, I have not heard anything. Is there going to be any kind of supplemental draft to get them loaded? Or is it
Not
just
that
going to be
I've
through
heard.
tenders?
Not that I've heard. I think them and Rochester get more tenders than
Right.
we all get. So that'll help them fill out their roster. I haven't heard anything about the draft, but I'm sure they'll be at the beginning of the draft. They might get a couple extra picks or they'll get more rounds to pick for, but I don't know if there'll be like an additional early draft or anything that they get. So we'll know more obviously as we get closer to June.
And, I hope they don't play like girls. I didn't mean that. So please, nobody, and I shouldn't say play like girls because there's some great girls hockey players out there.
You
Little
used
girls,
to be one of the
girls,
top.
like 8 and 10-year-olds. I don't want them to play like that. But the older
Yeah,
girls, they some good hockey players out there.
you were huge into girls hockey.
I was. My daughter actually got a chance to play all the way up through, win states, second, get a silver medal at nationals, and win a national championship at the college ranks. And after her freshman year, she had back surgery and kind of decided that academics were going to be more important right away. I'm probably the only parent in hockey that both of my kids had back surgery for different reasons their freshman year in college. That's it still amazes me the odds that that would happen to two siblings. My daughter got slew-footed. She was going to the bench and she was doing a slow NHL, stop on your back foot, swing your leg up on the boards, stop. And the girl swung behind her and just frickin' did the old slap shot move, just kind of whoop, and kept skating down the ice. And so she that kind of ended it right there. So she's doing fine. She's down there in that Dallas area next to the Brahmas. She's a Brahmas fan now. So,
well, that's good. Appreciate the support.
Yeah. What else, Mike? Is that about it for the night?
That's it. We've gone for almost an hour and a half, so we should probably cut it before people.
Yeah, I don't think we got anybody left anyway. Oh, yeah, there is. Good audience stuff. Hey, folks, thanks very much for checking in tonight. We'll post this up on Junior Hockey Advisor on YouTube. It's on our Facebook discussion group. If you haven't taken the time to subscribe yet, please, please, please. We're getting so close to that 1,000 mark. Jump over and subscribe, like and subscribe on our Junior Hockey Advisor YouTube group. That is a huge help for us. I can't tell you how much of a help it is. It's just really needed for us to keep this going the way we're doing it. Also, if you get a chance, grab some of these old videos, watch some of the old stuff. Frank mentioned it earlier. We've covered just about anything and any topic possible. So, go back and grab some of those on YouTube, watch some of the old stuff. I'm pretty much evergreen. I don't know about you, Mike, but, I can do this. All my material's fresh. I'm like a good comedian. I'm like Norm Macdonald. My material is good and it just stays fresh all the time. You might be a little bit more like
what's Am I Danny Cook?
No, I was thinking about what was the one that wore the red leather jumpsuit? What's his name? Come on.
Andrew Dice Clay?
No. Well, you could. That's even better. Yeah, you're kind of like the Andrew Dice Clay.
The like smoke from behind the
head. Oh, first time I saw that guy, I really liked him. I don't really know if I like him now, though.
Well, who's the guy you were thinking of with the red, would you say red leather jacket or velvet jacket?
No, red leather suit. He wore a whole red leather suit back in the 80s. He was on Saturday Night Live. He did the Gumby. He played Gumby on Saturday Night Live.
That's predating me.
No, he also was. He did the Beverly Hills Cop. He was Beverly Hills Cop. What's that guy's name?
Eddie Murphy.
Eddie Murphy. There we go. Troy jumped in. Murphy. There you go. Some people. You're the Eddie Murphy. You
Beverly Hills Cop.
You're good at one point, but your material might not be good. It might not last.
I think he's touring again. Come to think of it, he's back on the comedy show scene.
Oh, I thought he was in a wheelchair and Alzheimer's or something by now.
Nope, that's you.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Okay, listen. Next week, we're still up in the air if we're going to do a broadcast. We'll try. We might do a recorded broadcast, but I will be out starting tomorrow. And if you're looking to get a chaos call, a lot of you are trying to schedule chaos calls with me. I will still be working on scheduling chaos calls, and I'll still work on doing some chaos calls when I'm on vacation. And if you don't know what chaos calls are, that's booking an hour with me. Just direct message with me, and we can chat. We talk about all your problems. You can tell me everything. I'm an unlicensed psychiatrist at that point for hockey players and hockey families. But really what you do is if you're talking to me, you can do it with an advisor or without, but you're usually at an impasse, crossroads. You're trying to figure out a situation. I don't try to recommend teams or advisors. I just try to walk you through a process. So if you need that and you're trying to schedule, just DM me. I'll still be working on that over the little holiday I'm taking. And besides that, Mike, thank you so much for coming on tonight. Folks, have a great night, and we'll see you in a week or so.
Good night, everybody. Good night. Jeff, enjoy your vacation.